Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for a bona fide film star, Michael Jayston!
Good evening.
It's getting there. Slowly but surely. Whew, that was a lot of running around for the last second. 2 seconds, everyone. Oh, welcome to Perth, Michael.
Thank you.
Have you ever played the boards here at all?
Yes, funny you should say that. It was about 8 or 9 years ago with David Suchet playing a thing called The Last Confession, and it was a thing based on that Pope, Cardinal of Venice, who was only Pope for a very short time and then died, so it was supposed to be a murder. I don't believe it was a murder, but we've done 2.5 weeks in Chichester, and we came to Plymouth, and the reception was unbelievable. Because, as they said at the time, you don't get all that many shows down here with somebody of the stature of David Suchet.
Yeah.
And most of the Royal Shakespeare coming in the National Theatre between us. I mean, it was a standing ovation every night. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, the performances do tend to stop at Exeter, if we're lucky, and then before they get to us. I believe you're a Nottinghamshire lad, originally. Humble beginnings, shall we say?
Yeah. Well, my father died when I was about 1. I wish some fan has put that. It looks as if it's a sob story, but a lot of people have got sob stories. No, it was. I didn't realise at the time how unfortunate we were, because my mother worked for quite a famous chap called Sir Julian Kahn, who had stores all over England and was a very. He was into charity, and he used to take the cricket clubs. If nobody was chosen for England, he would choose an own side to go to India and places like that. Yeah. International sides. They didn't lose many matches because he himself was hopeless. He tried to get to be captain of Nottingham, but even in those days, although they had amateurs, he was that bad they couldn't. But he did build the stand at Trent Bridge.
Oh, right.
Julian Kahn stand, but no.
You grew up in the first 10 years of life was during when the war broke out.
Yeah.
Did you have any comprehension of what was going on around at that time, at that age?
Well, my grandfather, I remember, had been in the First World War, and hardly, like none of them do. People at that age never talked about what they went through. He said the occasional thing, like, I remember him saying it was a waste of life on both sides. But I remember my great-grandmother, who was always going on, I found out she was a bit of a liar, because she was going on about being 100 and getting a telegram from the Queen in a few years' time. She was actually 96 when she died, so she lied by about 2 or 3 years every year. But there was an air raid once. I mean, Nottingham never had as many bad air raids as Coventry or Liverpool or places like that, or Plymouth for that matter. But there were a few thousand people that died, and I remember my grandfather had tried to get my grandmother to go down into one of the shelters, and she wouldn't. She used to sit bolt upright with her purse in her hand and saying, if that Hitler or Mussolini came to this country, I'd give him a piece of my mind. She didn't care about anything.
Yeah.
But that generation, she'd had 5 children, and then her husband had died at the age of 37. So she lived to be 96 in not very good circumstances. But I don't ever remember anybody being frightened during the war. My mother and I, when we were in Bridgeford, we used to go into a cellar with about 3 or 4 other people. And when this voice came on the radio, I got clumped over the ear quite a few times, told to shut up, and I realised later it was Winston Churchill. That was the voice. Yeah. And since then I've done so many books about him, but I'd never have thought at that age. I was only about 5 or 6 at the time. But I don't remember anybody being frightened about the war.
Was there a sense of it, we're all in it together? You see, like, was that just like the misty eyes of looking back?
And I remember, I know my grandfather lived in a big house in Nottingham. he got blown down the stairs where all the windows were bashed in by some bomb that had gone off. And it didn't really faze him all that much. But they were very strange times altogether.
When did you feel a sense that you were like the next generation to carry on after it happened? Was there like a sense of responsibility on you as you grew up? Your generation's rebuilding the world after.
No, not at all.
No.
I don't think anybody did.
No, there's just a sense of carrying on with.
Well, what was it? What was that Churchill phrase? Keep buggering on.
Keep buggering on. Yeah.
I don't think that generation thought. I mean, we had rationing until I remember we had chocolate rationing until about 1950 something. Because remember, I was going to the cricket, and when the rationing stopped, I bought 2 Mars bars immediately. My Mars bars were about tuppence in those days.
What were you interested in as a child? What were the main things that sort of like grabbed you hold of you?
Oh, well, a bit older, I suppose cricket. Cricket got to me at a very early age. But when I was 12, I wanted to be a footballer in the winter, a cricketer in the summer, a actor in the evenings, and a writer in my spare time.
Just small ambitions then, nothing too grand.
Nothing too grand, no.
At least you had your calendar eye if you were at a young age, you were planning stuff out. So when did acting first of all like grab you? Was it at school? Was it a random trip through?
I acted at school quite a lot. And at home, I used to dress up as I remember. Well, they call them Red Indians. What they call them Native Americans now, but we called them Redskins in those days. I had one of those with the feathers on, and I got into a lot of trouble once. Didn't realise I'd got some of my mother's nail varnish. And I'd put the red nail varnish on. It took hours to get off. And it hurt. You don't put varnish on your face, do you?
So when you say you were first aware that acting was a profession you could go into?
Well, no, at one point, because of cricket, for about 2 or 3 years I wanted to be a cricketer. I wasn't a bad cricketer at that age, and but I suppose when I was about 15 or 16, there were about 5 or 6 matches played, and out of the let's say 40 odd players, you were going to get 2, might have had a contract at Notts. So I thought I was in with a chance, but I didn't do well enough to do that.
Yeah.
There were people like Millman who was playing, who became wicketkeeper for England eventually. He was one who got a contract. So I knew, I knew, it's like boys wanted to be train drivers at one point.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a cricketer, but I knew I wasn't good enough.
Do you remember what the actual, do you remember your first actual round of applause?
Not really, no.
No. Because I know a lot of actors live for that round of applause at the end of the show, and it's the main.
No, they don't really.
No.
It's good to get.
Yeah.
As long as you know you're entertaining people, it doesn't really matter. I don't think. But one of my first experiences like that was in the Nottingham Amateur Group, which the people before me were Peter Bowles, John Bird, contemporary Ken Loach, the great director. I think we were about 19 or 20 at the time. And Ken didn't have many political views, although I say that amateur group. There were 2 members of the Communist Party, and we used to go into the pub and sing the Red Flag. Yeah. But for some reason, guide me, O thou great Jehovah. So then came the Hungarian Revolution, and the Communist Party virtually, and my ideas of socialism. I mean, being brought up as a Catholic and sort of slightly rejecting that, Catholics generally become socialists, or it's either right wing or left wing. It's like the Jews. There's no Catholic middle or Jewish middle. Yeah. They're either very right wing or very left wing, I think. No, but I was doing a pantomime and there was some spina bifida children in. It was a charity thing, and this little. I had to go into the audience, and I was playing a character called Mr. Gosh, and all I had to say, and I was on stage most of the time. The only word I ever said was "gosh." If I'm surprised, gosh, 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 gosh. And I had to go into the audience at one point, and this little girl got me round the knees and said, "I love you, Mr. Gosh," and I thought, you know, that's why I'm here, to entertain people.
So as a tune, there's no small parts.
No, no small parts, only small players.
Yeah. What were you more a theatre goer lad or a cinema goer in your early days? Did one take preference over the other?
My mother used to take me to the cinema, but the general, of course, they were all what they were called B pictures in those days. But I remember seeing Charles Law in playing Henry VIII in a film, and I liked. I don't know. I still think Ingrid Bergman is one of the greatest actresses ever. Catherine Hepburn and Audrey Hepburn. I mean, Monroe, in some ways, was just a phenomenon. And to me, those three, I mean, Bergman was a far better actress than Monroe and didn't look bad looking either. Monroe was a strange character because I tended to, have you seen those photographs of Eve Arden that we took of her without any makeup on?
Yeah.
She looked far better with all that lip gloss, but
yeah.
Monroe in some ways was slightly ruined by that awful method teacher in America. What was his name? I've forgotten now. Brando. Sorry?
Stanislavski, is it? Or
who?
Stanislavski, the method actor.
Ah, well, they base it on Stanislavski, yes.
Right.
Steinberg?
What do you say?
Steinberg.
It's something like that, and I've forgotten his damn name, but his wife was the coach for Monroe. And Olivier was going out of his mind when they were doing The Prince and the Showgirl, because he kept giving her directions, and she kept taking Monroe to one side and giving her other directions, and Olivier was being like that, and I hated her. And I don't think he liked Monroe all that much either.
Were there any particular plays? I mean, how long was it before you discovered Shakespeare after the film? Was it before the film of Henry VIII? Or?
Oh no, it wasn't the Shakespeare.
No, oh, was it Shakespeare?
No, it was when Lawton was doing a lot of things, like he played my damn memory. Rembrandt. He played Rembrandt as well in that. Around about a year before. No, I suppose I read. My mother made me. Didn't make me read poetry like the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, Ode to a Nightingale by Keats, a lot of Dickens, and I read Julius Caesar, which is the easiest of Shakespeare's plays. It's a straightforward plot.
Yeah.
It's not like Lear or Hamlet. It doesn't go into any other things.
Yeah.
And I could still quote reams of them. And I've only played a tiny part of that on television. No, so Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
And then peculiarly enough, we did it at school when I was about 15 or 16 as an O-level.
What do you think is about Shakespeare that sort of makes it last? It sort of keeps it going strong even after all these years. People still find new stuff.
I think Shakespeare's got a great sense of humanity and never takes sides. You can make up your own mind.
Yeah.
Whatever's going on, somebody says something, and somebody says something else. He doesn't tell you which way to think. Even in Othello.
Yeah.
I mean, can you all hear me at the back?
Yeah.
I mean, Othello nowadays, a lot of people think it's a play about black people. It isn't at all. It is. It happens to be black, but it's not about racism. And one or two people have got the wrong way, the wrong tack about that. You can get certain lines, like Iago said, "I hate him for he is black." But that is nothing to do with it. The main item of Othello is jealousy.
Yeah.
Iago's jealousy because he hasn't been promoted, and his hatred of Othello because he hasn't been promoted, and jealousy of Othello and misplaced idea that his wife's having an affair with Michael Jayston.
I think Patrick Stewart did something quite good not long ago. He played Othello himself with an all-black cast around him to try and prove that it really wasn't all about race in the actual production as well. And he used to say that they used to have days where the inner city children would come in and see it, and everyone would get a huge round of applause, and he'd walk on stage and he'd get the slow clap. Poor bugger. It's debatable how Shakespeare should be taught and discovered to young children that nowadays lately as well, and whether it should be the text should come first or a performance in the play you should see. Have you got an opinion on that?
Ah, yes, should the text or the performance come first? Well, I was very, very lucky at school, and I may be wrong in my opinion, but it was a Catholic school and they were nearly all priests, but there were one or two who weren't, who were lady teachers. John Jayston, who was the English teacher. You never forget a great teacher, do you? John Jayston, his name was. And there, it was Julius Caesar. He said, listen, I know this, we've got to learn this as a text, and that can be very boring. He said, I want you to play the parts. So we'd go in and we'd play different parts. Sometimes I'd be Mark Antony, and sometimes somebody else would be. So we'd play the parts. He said, Shakespeare wrote this. He was an actor himself, and he wrote this to be performed first of all.
Yeah.
And he said, you'll get the gist of what, some words may be strange to you. Look them up in the dictionary, find out what they are, or what they were. Some words are still extant today. Some words aren't, like the word awful. Awful used to mean full of awe. I'm in awe of you. Now it means the opposite. But Jayston was incredible, and I think I was very good at English at school, but it was mainly because of his teaching.
And how do you feel that it should be performed as well? A lot of people like to take it and tamper it and like shape it for different styles. Sometimes they set in contemporary England, or sometimes it's set on the moon. I've seen one done like that before, where they'll set it on a space station. Should as long as the text stays the text, is that the most important thing, or is it the whole presentation?
Well, nowadays, it just depends how good you are at doing it. I mean, I did Graciano with Olivier playing Shylock, and that was set in Edwardian times, and I think it worked. But we had a marvellous director on that with Jonathan Miller. Glenda Jackson is now playing Queen Lear. And Glenda's a marvel. I've worked with her a couple of times. She's a marvellous actress, but you've got to suspend your disbelief, really. So they did an all-female production of Julius Caesar. In history, you know that Julius Caesar was not a woman, so then it becomes an acting exercise. And fair enough, I'd love to see Glenda as Queen Lear, but that's not the play.
Yeah.
It's King Lear, and it's about his daughters. I mean, I don't know. I think the jury's out. It's got to be very well done to work.
Yeah. On the subject, jury's out, and do you believe he wrote the plays himself, or was he a construct?
Oh, all this nonsense about he was far too uneducated. He had quite a good education.
Yeah.
He had Latin and Greek. It was the equivalent of our grammar schools nowadays. He was taught by somebody who'd just come down from Oxford. And they say because he wasn't one of the toffs. But if you analyse, even Derek Jacobi thinks that it might be Oxford. Who's the guy? Wolf Hall. Who played in Wolf Hall?
I've seen that one
On television. Great actor.
Kenneth Branagh?
No, Mark somebody.
Mark.
Riley?
Mark Rylance?
No, not Mark.
Does no one have Google on their phones, people?
No,
Help us
don't
out.
worry. Don't worry. But he's now changed his mind. But the Americans did one of those things you can put through a computer and work out certain phrases and certain emphases and certain things. And it came out that Oxford couldn't possibly have written it because his style and his own work was rubbish. Well, compared to Shakespeare. And his style wasn't at all like that. But my main point is that Shakespeare was an actor.
Yeah.
And he writes things in his plays that as an actor you know that he's written, oh, so-and-so's going to go off. Because he's coming back about 20 minutes later dressed up. He's giving him time to change. Or another actor has to go off and have a bit of a rest.
What do you think fuels these things then? Is it just people in search of conspiracy theory, or is it just actors just...
It's a theory.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lady, this didn't happen until about 1700 and something, and she was supported by a guy called Looney, L-O-O-N-E-Y, and he thought it wasn't written, he thought it was Bacon.
Yeah.
And then Henry Irving, who was a great actor, he was kind of the Olivier of his age, first actor to be knighted, did a whole, I've still got an old Shakespeare where they've got about 10 pages of him having a go at Bacon.
Yeah.
Because Bacon wasn't an actor, and you can tell he wasn't an actor. His style was totally different to Shakespeare's. And the people, I think there's still a Baconian society. But they tried to prove that there was a line in Love's Labour's Lost which goes, honorificabili judicatatibus, which means something or other. They worked out an anagram of Bacon has written these plays. This lasted for about 50 or 60 years until some other scholar worked out that that word had been used about 8 years before by another writer in another play. So that was that theory gone. I mean, if you talk about, you know, you can't be great if you come from a non-great background. Harold Pinter.
Yeah,
well, he wasn't born in the slums, but he was born in Hackney, and he wasn't far off the slums.
Yeah.
He was born quite near Lord Sugar. Noel Coward was lower middle class. Leonardo da Vinci didn't have a terribly good life. You take a hell of a lot of people come from very poor backgrounds who can make it.
Very unoriginal question.
Sorry,
I'm a very unoriginal man.
Just stepping. Anybody ordered food for 397? Okay, my apologies. It's sitting on the hot plate waiting to be eaten. So, okay.
Very unoriginal question, but I'm a very unoriginal man. What's your favourite role to play in Shakespeare? What's your favourite play overall?
Oh no, that's far too difficult. I've been in. I loved being in a play called Eden End at the National, written by J.B. Priestley and directed by Laurence Olivier, and it was Priestley's favourite play. I loved being in that. Joe Plowright was in it, and Leslie Sands, and Geoffrey Palmer. One of Geoffrey Palmer's. He'd been on television, but it was very peculiar the way our actors' minds work. Olivier hardly ever gave him any notes because he thought, and Geoffrey said, no. Just liked everything he was doing. But Geoffrey at that time was, as he is now, and I saw him not long ago, beautifully spoken. But at that time there were people like O'Toole and Finney and all the sort of kitchen sink kind of actors. I don't mean kitchen sink actors, but we were all doing different accents. And we all, I remember saying, oh, Geoffrey, he's going to be all right. No, he's not going to be all that famous. And how wrong I was.
Well, you mentioned Olivier then, so does the man match the myth, or is it a lot of actors' folktale?
How do you mean?
Was he as good as he says he was? As people say he was?
A lot of younger actors would now say he was a bit too technical, but I think some of his performances I've seen on screen still match up. I saw him with Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas in a George Bernard Shaw play years ago with Tyrone Power, and he was brilliant in that. He wouldn't kowtow in some ways to the film. His Olivier on record, you can get it on YouTube, but I mean it's a film as well, of course.
Yeah.
It sometimes seems a bit over the top, but his Olivier on stage, he wanted to capture that same thing, and it was riveting on stage. And I still think it works on film.
So when you finished your training, was the National Theatre the one you wanted to get to in the most, or was there other companies you tried?
No, but I'd spent some time before I was, there was a very fine Nottingham professional company there with people like Brian Blessed was walking on in the company. Robert Lang was in it. Some people you've probably never heard of, but Robert Lang was at the National for a long, long time. He's long dead now, but died too young. There was an actress called Rowena Cooper who was there, Donald Burton. And they were so good that I thought I wouldn't stand a chance. Then I saw a touring company, I forget what the name of it was, and they were so awful. I took a grade 8 acting thing and got a very high mark for it. And the guy who was the adjudicator said, "Why don't you audition for the Guildhall in September?" And I thought, auditioned, but I'd already left. I was working at the coal board at the time. I'd already left there. I'm working in the fish market, getting quite a lot of money, but only to get up about 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm finishing about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and acting in the evenings with the amateur company. And I'd saved enough money I was going to work my way through drama school, and probably work in Chinese restaurants, which you could do in those days. And a lot of people did when I was at Guildhall. They'd got set other jobs as well as doing their ordinary classwork. But I managed to get a scholarship, so suddenly this 350 quid I'd saved up was gold dust.
How did it feel travelling out of Nottingham? How long were you there before you actually left for the first time?
Nottingham?
Yeah, Nottingham, yeah.
20. Oh, well, I've been in national service.
Oh, right.
I went straight from school,
Yeah.
my Catholic school, before I was 18, because I was going to go to university. And that was a culture shock as well, because, I mean, I'd heard bad language.
Yeah.
But if you didn't effing blind, nobody took any notice of you. And I had to watch it when I went home, because I got used to swearing, you know what I mean? And so I did 18 months in Germany.
Yeah.
But I mean, you won't believe this now, but I was classed as an athlete, because I was playing cricket for the regiment, I was playing football and hockey for the regiment, and I played for the division as well at cricket. And if you were classed as an athlete, you missed early morning parade. So I used to store into the office around about 9 o'clock.
How long did your national service go on for? Did you actually contemplate continuing, or did you get out as quick as you could?
Yeah, for a very short time, I wanted to be in the paratroopers, and I started off, jumping from there in a harness to do the proper falls, and then I got a note saying that I'd have to do an extra year. So I thought, no, thank you, because the national service was 2 years.
When you were training to be an actor at the time, how was TV and film looked at? And then a lot of people do say it was looked down on tremendously.
It was.
At school.
They didn't think television was anything. If you did a commercial,
Yeah.
do you remember that? You're Never Alone with a Strap. It was an actor. He made a lot of money out of it. He never did any other work apart from odd pantomimes, because it ruined his career. Whereas nowadays, I remember years later working with Peggy Ashcroft and Michael Horden. And Michael Horden was doing a lot of voiceovers for various things. And Peggy kind of looked down on us, and Michael Horden said, you ought to try this, you know, Peggy. I mean, I've got 2 sons I've sent through university. He said, I've got a little villa in France, and went on and on and on, and Peggy said, do you have a special agent for this? Television.
Oh, yeah.
No, when I was at Bristol Old Vic, which was about a year after I left drama school in '62, Salisbury and Bristol Old Vic, '63-ish, television and films were considered the kind of way to make a hell of a lot of money, and you wanted to do them. But theatre was the basic thing, because
you start for your art, basically.
Audiences, yeah.
Since we mentioned adverts then, you had a very well-known advert a while ago, and does anyone remember if you had an intense, nervous headache?
that was about 40 years ago.
It was very popular at the time.
I used to do the, what was that? People could never remember what it was. It was gold from St. The tagline was a buttery taste, gold from St. Apple. And people used to say to me, I like that ad you do for butter. I said, the whole point about it isn't butter. It's like if you see, Morecambe and Wise did one, and nobody could remember what they were advertising.
I've heard actors say turning on for a voiceover gig is type of like the Pandora's box of acting. You don't know what you're going to get when you get in there. You probably don't know what you're doing when you're speaking it. How badly do they range from the comprehensible to the incomprehensible?
What voiceover?
Yeah, when you're stuck in that booth.
It's got a bit better nowadays with it, but the worst ones I ever did were for Maxwell, you know, the guy who supposedly killed himself on Tenerife, Robert Maxwell. Never actually met him, thank goodness. But I was doing one of his papers, which was a free paper, I think, for the city that never sleeps, the paper that never stops. That was the tagline. It was to take over from the Evening Standard. He started writing them himself, and he wasn't a very good writer. So I'd be tootling back home, and I there were 4 mobiles. I rang my agent and said, can you go in tonight? They're paying you double, because he's changed it. So I'd go in and do some more. I paid a hell of a lot of money for that, because he kept changing things. So only lasted for about 6 or 7 months. And I also did a thing called the European newspaper. They both plummeted. Eventually, I think this paper started off at threepence, and eventually it was being given away for free. But the first ads were beautiful, not written by him. J. Walter Thompson gave him the sack, which he got very upset about.
Yeah, just getting back a little bit then. If my research notes were correct, your first TV was something called Suspense, in which you're credited as Intense Young Man.
Oh, yeah.
Were you an intense young man, and did that come easily to you?
No, but the peculiar, I only had about 1 line in that, and I was supposed to be an enthusiast of Eisenstein films. And my line was, you know, you could do that shot through the Admiral's crutch. Now, this was 1962, 62. I was still at drama school, I think. The powers that be said, oh, you can't say the word crutch. Oh, God, no. You could, and it was ludicrous. I must have spent hours ringing up saying, what can we say instead? I eventually finished up with the line, I think you could do that shot over the Admiral's head or something like that.
How did you find the transition from the theatrical to the television studios then? Because your training was all theatre. Was it, again, another like culture shock? Do you have to relearn the craft, basically?
Not at all, I found it. And when I was doing my first real television was a thing called the Power Game, which was one of the most highly successful things ever done in the 60s with Patrick Weimar and Barbara, God, my name, she's dead now. Debbie Watling's father.
Jack Baldwin.
Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah. But because the Royal Shakespeare Company had got plays in repertory, peculiar enough, they allowed me off to do it. They worked out with television company, but we used to have a fortnight's rehearsal. Nowadays, when I was doing Emmerdale, if you've got a big scene, you get hold of somebody the night before and go over it, because you don't get any rehearsal.
Yeah.
I feel very sorry for those people that are in the soaps, because you just get on, you do a run, and then you get the camera, and you do a run, and then you're in.
Yeah.
You're doing it. Whereas in the old days, we used to have a fortnight's rehearsal.
Yeah.
Now, I'd just done Hamlet with David Warner, which is, he was 3 3/4 hours, 2 intervals. And television seemed like an absolute toddler.
Oh, that's
That'd
what
be
I was going to say.
interview.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I remember where I was then, watching Train of Thought. That's it. Oh, yeah. TV at the time was also...
Barbara Murray.
Barbara Murray.
Barbara Murray. I mean, you're talking about one of the most successful weaves out there.
Yeah.
I think it was 14, 15 million. But of course, in those days, there were only 3 channels.
Yeah.
14 or 15 million. And then Patrick, of course, cursed a lot of actors that he died when he was 44 because of the booze.
And did you handle live television broadcasts then, when you were involved in those?
No,
No.
just missed it.
Just missed it.
Well, like most actors,
Yeah.
they used to just carry on.
Yeah. It's just a skill. Would you say today's acting is more of a craft or an endurance test? Because we were talking about that with the soaps then. Is it the craft still exist, or is it just endurance test upon endurance test?
I think it's worse for actors nowadays because there's no proper theatre going on. They can learn their craft. And I've seen people who come from television, who are quite successful on television, and be absolutely hopeless on stage. It's not their fault, because they haven't had the training. And they think projection is shouting, which it isn't. And they've no idea of stagecraft. Barbara Windsor's an exception, because she started off on stage.
Yeah.
She started off with Joan Littlewood and people like that. Then got into films. But I can't think of any old actors who weren't equally good. If they were very good on stage, they were equally good on television and film, I think. Whereas nowadays, you get somebody who can be fantastic on film, and you get them on stage, and they're hopeless. I've seen a few Americans like that.
One of the early films you did was Cromwell with Richard Harris. Again, sort of rephrasing the earlier question, does the myth paint a legend with Richard Harris? Was he as bad as they said he was?
Was Richard Harris as bad as he said he was? Well,
As they said he was, sorry. But are you talking Devonshire with you here? Sorry.
I like Richard up to a point, but it only hit me not all that long ago that I was doing the biography of John le Carré, written by Adam Sisson. And this is after, I'll get back to Richard in a minute. And Richard Burton was playing Sabio came in from the cold, and Marty Ritt, who was directing it, couldn't stand him because he thought he'd sold it, and up to a point I agreed with that at that time. Richard was getting on for 40, and apart from his first few films, he was doing it for the money. He married Liz Taylor, and in the book, Le Carré said in Dublin, but they had to stop filming because Liz had arrived, like the Queen had arrived or something like that. But apropos of your story about Richard, they had to come to the last one of the last few shots where he has to climb over the wall. And Marty Ritt said, "You better watch Richard, because he's got a bottle of whiskey with him." So Le Carre went with him. I mean, Le Carre, the real name's David Cornwall. Le Carre went with him, and he must have a hard head. He said, "I drank most of the bottle of whiskey because it would have looked a bit silly if he hadn't been able to get over the wall. I drank most of it," and this was the telling point. Le Carre said, "Because Burton didn't have a head for drink." And I suddenly thought, neither did Richard Harris or O'Toole. They're not. And I look back at all the drinkers, the real drinkers I know. I'm not saying drinking's fantastic for you, but Denham Elliott, for instance, an actor called Denham Elliott, did a play with Sam West when Sam was about 24, 25. Denham drank a bottle of vodka during the show. Never went wrong once. Olivier didn't drink on stage in his later years, but afterwards he could drink all night.
Yeah.
Next morning, you wouldn't know. He never went wrong. Ralph Richardson used to. I remember working with him on a terrible load of rubbish with Michael Gambler. And he came in one day and Ralph said, "There you go." And he got a bottle of Volnay and gave it to everybody and made sure we drank it. The director sort of said, "Go on, drink up." The director had to leave his car there and get a taxi. So, I mean, Richard would, I saw him after we'd been out for a meal one night where we'd had beer and wine and stuff like that. Drank a bottle of brandy by the neck. And couldn't understand why he'd been taken to hospital to get pumped out. Now, that to me is not drinking.
No.
I think drinking is having a marvellous time with people. And all right, you might have too much sometimes, but you're having a fantastic time. Whereas theirs, I think there was I think O'Toole and Burton especially were split personalities. They hated themselves. And so did Denham Elliott, of course. And Denham Elliott was bisexual, although he was married twice. And he had all those demons that made him drink, and it's such a shame. I mean, nobody knows how they're going to be born, do they? And he had problems. His second wife, the American, stood by him, but knew when he went away filming, he'd be off with some fella and died of AIDS. However, I'm sorry, we're getting very...
Yeah, we get right.
Do any of you go to other Doctor Who conventions?
Yes.
Like, have you been to Newcastle?
Yes.
Have you been to? Have you heard me speak before?
Yes.
Oh, you have. So you've heard the one about Blair and Livingston and apologising to the Africans. Oh, I can tell you that. It's not rude. This is Tom Baker.
Oh, yes.
I don't know whether you remember. It was when Blair was in charge of our country. He's never been in charge of it. Blair and Livingston apologised to the Africans for the slave trade. Tom Baker sent me an email saying, now that Blair and Livingston have apologised to the Africans for the slave trade, are the Africans going to apologise to us for eating all the missionaries? Well, everybody apologises for everything, don't they?
On the subject of Tom Baker, there, that's a good segue. You worked with him in Nicholas and Alexandra. I stuttered there, sorry. I've heard that film, even though it gets quite a lot of praise nowadays, as being a lot of backslapping at the end of it, but no work really following it. I've heard it's one of those ones where people, good job, mate, I like that film.
I've said that.
Yeah.
And yet the peculiar thing is somebody's helping me write my book at the moment, because all my children, they're all grown up now, but they want me to put all my stories so that it's there, so that it's for record or something. Fair enough. Sorry, what was your question about Tom?
No, I was just saying using Tom as you worked with him.
Nicholas Alexandra, some of the Americans tore it to pieces. Janet Sussman and I got away with it up to a point because it said Michael Jayston and Janet Sussman do the best they can with the material available. Another American said this was about two fairly uninteresting people in history. It was at the time of the American Revolution, the Russian Revolution. You've got Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky, and various people. They were just peripheral, and you'd get silly things like saying, "Oh, hello, I'm Stalin," and say, "Oh, I'm." They didn't have those names then.
Yeah.
And so it upset the. I don't mean the pedants, but it upset people who were historically correct. I mean, it had a hell of a cast, but
Yeah.
a tiny part. Kurt Jürgens, for instance, German actor, he did 2 days' work on it. He got a Mercedes car in 2 days' work, which was about. Can I?
The floor is yours, sir.
There was he's with my agent and he's 90 something now. A great Swedish actor called Max von Sydow.
Oh, yes.
Ah. He was offered Rasputin. Wow. Now, one of the reasons I couldn't stay, Sam Spiegel is the only Jewish person I've ever met that I disliked. I like Jews. I think they're an amazing lot of people. Some of them aren't, like Robert Maxwell. But he turned him down because he didn't like his accent. Now, you're talking about one of the greatest actors of all time. Rasputin was a peasant. Max von Sydow could easily have played that part. The next choice was O2. And, he didn't like Liv Ullmann because she had an accent, because I auditioned with Liv Ullmann. That was the first one. He didn't like Liv Ullmann. Alexandra was German, so she could have had the accent that Liv Ullmann had, and Liv Ullmann speaks superb English with a slight accent. Ingmar Bergman's one of his wives at one point. All right, now the second choice was O'Toole, and I was in Spiegel's office when I found out I'd got the part, and if you don't get a full script, you can turn it down still.
Yeah.
So he gets the final script, and O'Toole sent Spiegel a telegram saying, my lifetime contract finished 3 days ago. I wouldn't have wanted to do it anyway. That was it. So he turned it down. So Tom gets it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you though, O'Toole was going to be paid about at least 100 times more than Tom. Tom was living in a one-down place near the old Vic in London at the time, near the Cut. I'd met him vaguely. But Olivier virtually got him that part because I was being made up one day in Madrid. And Olivier said, are you still looking for someone to play Rasputin? And Spiegel was years later. Why don't you try this? He played a mad lift attendant on television not long ago. And he's been in the Royal, he's been in with me at the old Vic, he's mad.
Yeah.
He could play it.
Yeah. It's a funny thing.
So we were all virtually, well, I got good money compared to what you're talking about theatre, but nowhere near the kind of money that O'Toole and people like that have got.
When you play those historical parts, like during Zulu Dawn, is there any difference to the approach or the performance? Because you know you're playing something that's actually happened or characters that actually existed. Do you feel the responsibility to play it a certain way, or do you think it's a performance that I'm free to do whatever?
Well, no, take Nicholas and Nicholas Alexander. The man, in some ways, was a weakling. And this is why I don't think my career didn't do much good after that. I went back on stage, and I based it on King Hussein of Jordan up to a point, because he was the same sort of character taken over by situation, and Nicholas had inherited the tyranny of the Tsars, and he much preferred to have been a farmer than the Tsar, but he happened to, by fault of history, he was a Tsar.
Yeah.
And he was a much more amiable man, but he had to do ruthless things, and he did some ruthless things as well. And he and Alexandra used to speak English and German together, or French. But he had to be autocratic, because that was the way the Russians, and still are to this day, they've got to have an autocracy and a strong person at the top. They seem to like that. They get revolutions against it, but Putin, he's just as autocratic. And a bright man.
We're going to jump ahead a little bit here because, not for time's business, but Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
No, you were talking about playing historical.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you've got to be truthful, as long as you don't get it wrong. It annoys me when I mean, for instance, I played Siegfried Sassoon years ago, and Wilfred Owen on television. And there was I nearly sent him a letter. There was an actor about 2 or 3 years ago playing Owen. And he said, I'm working on the Welsh accent. And I thought, he didn't have a Welsh accent. He was upper class, but he was educated in Birkenhead. You know, and people get it, if you get it wrong like that.
I suppose it's a judgment call you have to make. I mean, we see it lately with the American epics when they make these. I think what's his name? Made the Columbus movie in '90. Ridley Scott.
Oh yeah.
Made the Columbus movie in '92 and cast the most French bloke in the world possible to play Christopher Columbus.
Catherine Zeta-Jones was in that.
Yeah. And recently, Apocalypto, which tried to do a dramatisation of the last days of the Mayan culture, and ended the movie with the Spanish arriving 600 years before they actually did.
Well, it's like getting. Yeah, I mean, look now at myths.
Yeah.
I go to there was an alternative pantomime in Brighton, which is totally politically incorrect, which is why I like it. They're all gay, apart from one straight guy who's very handsome, but it's hilarious. But I remember talking to one of them afterwards, talking about myths, and he said, you know, I don't, I'm Welsh, and I've never gone for Churchill at all. He said, because of Tony Pandy. He said, when he brought out the military and people were killed. I've looked that up. The military were called out, but a letter was recently sold for thousands of pounds, where Churchill said he didn't want to call out the military. The police in Cardiff and places like that had called out the military. There was nobody killed by the military. In fact, the miners and the police welcomed the military because it balanced them up. It's like the Orgreave business that they're thinking about. 1984, the miners' strike. I met Jimmy Reed. And do you remember Jimmy Reed? The Clyde workers took on Thatcher. No violence. And I saw him in the middle of that thing, and I said, "What did you think about Scargill? You know him." "Oh, you couldn't stand him." He said, "Well, you know, I hate Margaret Thatcher, but he said Scargill is a dangerous lunatic." He said he brought out the miners without a mandate. 2 of the unions didn't like what he was doing, and they said there was nobody killed in that thing.
Yeah.
There were 2 miners, striking miners, who got a heft of pavement and dropped it on a taxi driver, killing him.
Yeah.
That's the other side of it.
Yeah.
All right, the police may behave badly, but there's the other side of it as well. And those are the facts, I think. And a lot of Yorkshire people still hate Thatcher because of that. But Reed couldn't stand Thatcher, said that Scargill was the main problem. And stupid. Anyway, I'm going off on it.
Yeah. No, very topical in political manner. You weren't expecting, were you?
Parallels today with the Brexit. So there's parallels going on there today as well.
Yes, because I voted to Remain, actually, because I looked at all and I thought the people in Remain spoke. There were less lies going on.
Yeah.
But nobody knows what they were doing then, and they don't know what they're doing now. They haven't a clue. But I'm so glad we live here and not in America.
That's one concept.
Yeah.
Choose between a corrupt woman and a lunatic.
Oh,
I was looking for some information the other day, and he must have been American. He said, I was talking to my folks the other day. He said, they're scared of Trump. He said, I'm not scared of Trump. I'm scared of the millions of people who are going to vote for him.
Trump means fart in England, so it's even more hilarious. Yes,
I know.
I'm going to slightly do it quickly here because we're running out of time. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. It's a very impressive drama at the time with a very good cast. And Alec Guinness was one of the ones was in there and you worked with him. He's much the same way like you've done Doctor Who in events like this around your one row in Doctor Who, despite the fact you had a good career. Alec Guinness also had that thing where he did Star Wars, and it's all much I'm stuttering. I do apologise, everyone.
He's stuttering. He's in awe of me.
It dwarfed the entire back half of his career for a time being, if you didn't know it. Do you think actors, even though they crave success, also fear too much success?
That's it reminded me of Alec Guinness because he'd done Star Wars before Tinker Tailor.
Yeah.
Because there was a strike when we were doing Tinker Tailor. We virtually finished it. We thought, for a week. Now, Alec Guinness blamed it on the fact that he didn't take everybody out for a meal the night before. It was a Sunday, we weren't working Sunday. Paid for everything, an incredibly generous man. But John Irving, the director, and Howell Bennett had started quoting Macbeth, which you're not supposed to do on sometime. He got very upset about it. The next day there was a strike. Alec got a slight thing in his eye where he had to have a tiny operation. Howell Bennett thought he'd got cancer, had to have an operation, but it only took about 4 or 5 days and it wasn't. However, Alec said, here's the one now. I said we were stuck. I was stuck for a week in Maidenhead with Alec, Anthony Bate, Howell, who was hardly ever around, and myself. At 12 o'clock, we'd say, we don't need you. So the rest of the day, Alec said, I think it's time for the Bert Clico, Michael. But he was a bit naughty. He pretended he didn't like gossip, but he absolutely adored it. And Alec said one day, he said, you know who's won one of the awards recently? And I said, no, he'd won for Star Wars. Eventually, but the look on his face, he said, yes, I know, a tiny part. I don't really deserve it. He got me. I mentioned about, I don't know how many names, and it was him.
Do you think it's a shame that it did sort of like draw off his entire career for a little while? Because I mean, he's made brilliant films like Lady
Well,
Comes to
yes,
Britain,
but don't forget, also, I remember we got so fed up with him paying for everything.
Yeah.
But Nigel Scott, myself, and we all paid for it. He said, oh, and Nigel said, well, yes, I know, that's just sort of a few weeks for, money coming in from Star Wars. You should do a bit cheeky, Nigel.
We're going to throw open the question now because I've grabbed it and studied on for a bit too long. So, does anyone have any questions for Michael? Yes.
In UFO, you played an international show jumper called Russell Stone. And
I
you
did.
seem to spend a lot of time with a horse running around. Thing. Do you have a knowledge of horsecraft, or was that just the script?
Nay.
No, it's peculiar because I did an interview about that, and when you think it was over 30, hang on, more, nearly 50 years ago, no more than that, because it was before Nicholas Alexander. That was 19.
It went into production in 1968 and it was transmitted between 1970 and 1970.
And I did it with Susan, married to Jimmy Boland. She was in Jimmy Boland's wife, Susan.
Reeve?
No, I'd learned to ride for Cromwell, and I'd ridden on Mad Jack, and so, no, I couldn't do the big jumps, so there was actually an Olympic guy who did those. I did jump once by accident when Bluey decided, I thought, I can't, all right, he's going to go, and I can't stop him, so he did. And I think they kept it in, actually. But they got some, and poor old Bluey, he was 6 when that happened, and I found out he'd broken his neck about a year later. Lovely animal. No, I mean sometimes writers who don't write put the horse rears up and you think, oh God. To get a rearer, you get a rearer. And most horses don't rear unless they're absolutely panic-stricken. I know a writer writes that the horse is absolutely panic-stricken. What do you do?
Any other questions? Thank you, good night. No. Can I say the Look word, or do I have to say the Scottish play?
Oh, no, we're not in the theatre.
No, that's okay. You've played him on TV for a TV miniseries as well in the 1970s.
Yeah, with Barbara Lee Hunt.
Yeah. Does Shakespeare translate well for the small screen, do you think? Or is it much more, it's more should stay in the theatre than being filmed?
It all depends on the way it's filmed. I mean, I think if you watch Schofield in King Lear, which was 1960-something, Peter Brook, it's absolutely brilliant because it's filmed correctly. Whereas Olivier, it was done sort of as in the theatre, if you see the film. And the sound on most televisions is absolute rubbish, isn't it?
Yeah.
So even if you hear the proms, I went to the proms, my daughter got my wife and I some tickets. It's a totally different sound experience now. Most televisions, the sound's rubbish. Why don't they get the sound better to make it sound as it would? Like, all these years, and the sound isn't right on television.
Yeah.
You've got to get proper sound. You've got to do your own. You've got to do your own homework on it.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Dolby surround sound system.
Yeah.
Muffled speakers as well.
But it depends how you're shooting it.
Yeah.
It can be good.
Does it work as a serialised performance though, or should it be one long telly movie?
Well, ours was split into 5.
Yeah.
I think it should be in one because that's the way it should be.
One of the other most iconic series you've been involved with is Only Fools and Horses. And you are the one who...
Yeah, but you see, you're just talking about Alec Guinness was known for so-and-so.
Yeah.
I mean, I was working with Chris Timothy and Art Malik about 7 or 8 years ago on tour, and we were in Glasgow, and there was this drunk Scot. I mean, he wasn't violent or anything, but he kept saying to me, I've seen you somewhere before. I trotted out a few things I'd done. No. And I thought, all right, here we go. I said, Only Fools and Horses, I was the one. He said, well, didn't you say that before? Bought us drinks. He said, hey, playing the old boys, all that. All these years, and I've done loads of stuff on film, television. Doctor Who, I never thought 30 years ago that I would still be here with all these Doctor Who fans. And I've now been all over. I've been Los Angeles, Chicago, Glasgow, you name it. Newcastle, Swansea last week. I never have thought it would still be here, actually.
Well, even like films like Nicholas Alexander oh, my brain is so fried.
I know it's a drink.
Yeah. All these films made all these years ago, does it surprise you people still happily go and view these things and actually they still get shown?
Well, they show Nicholas Alexander a lot on television. I don't know why. And they also show Zulu Dawn. Are there any children here? No.
No, you say kids.
Yep.
Can I tell them a Zulu Dawn?
Tell them as much as you want, Michael. The floor is yours, sir.
We're out in Newcastle in South Africa at the height of apartheid with people like Burt Lancaster, Peter O'Toole, Damon Elliott, Anna Calder Marshall, Simon Ward, you name it. We're approaching Rorke's Drift, the real Rorke's Drift. And as I said, we were hundreds of miles from anywhere. And there were these 6 lavatories put on the, erected. Asian male, Asian female, Zulu male, Zulu female. There weren't many Zulu females. Caucasus and so and so. And O'Toole said, it looks like Golgotha. Anyway, O'Toole, one day, about 4 days later, goes into the Zulu male one by mistake. And there's a Zulu already in there who comes out adjusting his loincloth. And O'Toole came out, and we had a lot of Afrikaner, the boss at Bureau of State Security, that used to be called, who infiltrated us trying to find out various things. O'Toole, the great, they hated him. He said, I know why there's apartheid, my darlings. They've got bigger cocks than we have. He was doing a shot about 3 or 4 hours later. He got a megaphone saying, bigger cock. Next day, when he came onto the set, the Zulus had lined up, and it's the Baiti, which they hardly ever give to a white man, which is the royal. And it was fantastic. And the word went round and said, what's giving him the royal salute? They don't do that. Apart from the Archbishop of Pretoria, they'd never done it to a white man for years. O'Toole was waving his hand, saying, bigger cocks!
When you look back over your career then, and all the things you've done, I just want to point out, this is his career in paper form, ladies and gentlemen. All his rows, all this stuff, 14 pages worth. How do you rate yourself? When you look back, when you think of your performance in the work you do? I mean, I'm a fan, obviously, and I can gush over you.
Well, you said it to begin with.
Yeah.
You know, what did I think about getting into television? When I was so pleased that eventually I made it. I got a scholarship. I've done quite well at drama school. I got quite a lot of awards and things like that. But I went into the theatre, and I didn't think, oh, goody goody, I'm going to make a lot of money. I was pleased to be working. Whereas I think a lot of actors, maybe I've got them wrong, that they think about that.
The stardom.
It's like, what's that awful program with Simon Callow then? Simon Callow.
X-Crack.
The X-Factor. They think of success and they say, my career's over, and they're 18 and a half or something. I didn't go into the business to. I'd have much preferred to have stayed in the theatre, I think, for a long, long time. Instead of doing other things. And in fact, I've stayed in the theatre. I might have achieved a bit more theatrical-wise, but who knows? I've had a much luckier career than most people when you think about it.
Being gainfully employed according to all of that.
Yeah, but I had a very bad chunk where I was only doing John le Carré books and things like that. Incidentally, he's writing, I keep in touch occasionally, only very occasionally. I send him a birthday card, and he always, by return of post, he said, my next book's going to be about Peter Quillen, so I'll send you a copy. My wife said, it's a bit too old. I mean, how old is he supposed to be now? No, but I think from going way back in circus days. I mean, he's 80, hang on, you know, born at age 31. He's 85 now, and he said, I've just finished one book and I'm feeling bereft, I'm writing another immediately. Cannot. He's got to keep working.
Are you surprised that any role comes back to haunt you? Like, what's been the most obscure? Said, oh, I saw you in that so many years ago.
Well, the lady said, the UFO. I mean, that was 1968, 69, and yet there's a picture of me and Susan, what's that name? Jimmy Boland's wife. There's a picture of me and her going back to '68, and we don't look bad actually. and it's strange because there's still people who like UFO. And there again, I mean that Canadian guy, what's his name, who played the lead.
Ed Bishop. He's
Yeah,
around.
lovely, lovely man.
We actually had him as a guest.
Did you?
Yeah, a long time ago.
He was on Power Game as well. He played a Jewish guy on the Power Game on one episode. I liked him a hell of a lot. We had a few arguments about various things, although we were both quite left-wing at the time.
Was it Susan James and Jimmy
Susan
Boland?
Jameson.
I think you said.
Yeah, well done.
Good.
There aren't any prizes going on.
We can give you a glass.
The committee might give you a special one at the closing ceremony if you can. The committee might give you a special one at the end if you're good.
Right, before we wrap up, is there any final questions? One at the back there, my friend.
Yeah, we had to throw this in, sorry. In the early 1990s, you also played Colonel Mustard in season 2 of Cluedo. Which I have to say, I've been reliving recently on YouTube, and it's fantastic. How much did you have to steer stupid contestants to ask you the questions that you needed to put information across to them in studio?
How much what?
How much did you have to steer the questions that that the contestants were asking you so that you could actually help them to solve the...
Oh, not at all.
No?
No, we were ad lib, and whatever they asked us, we had to answer. But if you were you had to answer it truthfully if you were, and untruthfully if you were. But I mean, going back to that, Richard Wilson. Oh, considering he played that 1 foot in the grave, he's one of the funniest men I've ever met in my life. But I'm naughty as well, but so clever with his naughtiness. He'd sort of look sideways at your ear when he was, which, I know it sounds silly to an actor, but if somebody's not quite looking at you properly and you're looking at their ear, and the crew got onto this as well. Crew Stark. She couldn't turn up for one close-up when I'd got, it was a close-up on me and she was supposed to be in the background. And the director said, "Do you want her there?" And I said, "No, we could have one of the wig blocks if you like." And one of the cameramen said, "Well, at least you get an expression out of that." I was topped on that. I like Ruler, but the trouble was, Ruler was going through a sort of divorce with Dennis Waterman at the time. So thank goodness Koo was with her most of the time. So I spent a lot of the time with Richard, and I found him. He used to give me lectures about smoking because he'd been working in a hospital before he became an actor. But then I found out later on, he and Ian McKellen used to occasionally have the cocaine. I mean, not much. I thought, wait till I see you again. But he's not very well at the moment. I know he had a heart attack. But somebody saw him about a week ago and said he's not too bad. But a very, very funny man. You'd never think about seeing him playing that grump. And of course then they had the lovely, Sapphire and Steel.
David McCallum.
David McCallum. Lovely guy. And Molly Sugden.
Yes.
My God.
One more there. Yeah.
So, you've read many audio books on the radio, recitation of every household's road mail, played on Radio 4. Was it any tales of that part of the industry?
What was the last thing you said?
Is there anything you'd like to share about sort of reading audio books and that sort of part of your career?
Well, road mail, peculiar enough. Somebody asked me at one of these conventions about 4 years ago, and I kind of went, and thank goodness I saw him afterwards, because he said I seemed to be so sort of offhand about it. But when I came to do road mail, I'd done about 3 or 4 books months before, one after the other. So it was like being absolutely match fit. So when it came to do Rogue Mail, and then it's been jigged about 5 or 6 times then, and that was over 10 years ago. I enjoyed doing it. But there was a guy called Alexander Kent who actually lived not all that far away down. I've done all his books as well. And they're worthy books up to a point, but sometimes he can go, he can sometimes write things, well he's dead now, but obviously a fine man, and he used to send messages to me saying how he liked my doing his books, because Belitho was a sort of Nelson character, I suppose. But when you get lines like, which can be taken one of 2 ways, Svensson was given 40 lashes for ignoring the wind. Right? Was that you? No.
To close out then, a very somber question. I'm probing you finding notes about how other people you worked with and opinions of them. How would you like to be remembered?
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. In a couple of years' time, when we ask some young chap who's come to a convention, oh, you worked with Michael Jayston, what was he like? What would you like them to say? What would you hope they say, probably?
Well, I hope he said something like he was quite funny, actually, and good-mannered. Yeah. Actually, my wife said that the other day. A lot of people say love is the most important thing. I mean, obviously love is, but some writer who said kindness in some ways is better, and I tend to think that that's probably right, because you can love things sometimes for the wrong reasons. If you're kind to somebody, you know.
A very nice point to end on. So, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Mr. Michael Jayston.